Everybody, welcome to the For the Love podcast.
Welcome.
We're happy to have you. I mean, I'm serious. Like, we're happy to have you today.
Yeah.
Well, we just finished our interview. Like, we're both just kind of looking at each other like,
shit.
Yeah. It's a special day when you get to just spend an hour with a brilliant thinker.
An hour that felt like 5 minutes.
Did.
And when it was over, I was like, wait, no.
No, I know.
No. I have 18 more questions.
Same. I wanted to hang onto her ankle and be like, okay, but I've got something else I want to talk to you about. Her like interesting, fascinating blend of academia with storytelling is so special. Mm-hmm. I think this is why she is everywhere. We're getting ahead of ourselves. We're bearing the lead, and I know that. But all I'm just telling you is this is a day that you are not going to want to even stop this for 1 second. You need to listen beginning to end. And I want to remind you of something that's kind of new that Amy and I are like super pumped about. Over at jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab, first of all, it's every podcast we've ever done. So go over there and peruse at your leisure. And we've got links and story notes and just everything's over there. But a new feature that we've just added is a audio feature where you can just, with the click of a button, you can leave us a message. You can tell us a story. You can ask a question. You can respond to a prompt that we have given you. You can respond to an interview you just heard. And we're going to play a bunch of those on the show.
Leave a voicemail.
It's leaving a voicemail. I used a lot of words to say, we now have a feature in which you can leave me and Amy a voicemail, and we are going to use a bunch of those on the show. In fact, we're going to use those as like generators for like, hey, Sarah from Cincinnati asked us this, and we're going to play Sarah's question, and then I guess we're going to answer it, or we're going to talk about it, or whatever. So
Yammer about it.
I say that because we would love to hear your response to this conversation you're about to listen to. So when you get to the end of this episode, pop over to jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you heard. Tell us what you're learning. Tell us what you're ruminating on, or what was a fascinating thing for you to hear today, because I'm telling you, it's a long list.
I was just saying to our producer that I went back and watched several interviews she did with a live audience.
Oh, yeah.
And invariably, like, she just says one sentence and you can hear the audience gasp.
Totally. She is like that.
Yeah. So everyone's going to have some thoughts.
I know.
About this one.
I know. Like, I'm energized. My brain is buzzy. Mm-hmm. I got like the energy sweats. Do you know what I mean? I have energy sweaty armpits from such a high level conversation that could have gone on. It could have gone on for 12 hours. Okay. Before we get to it, because I want to save the majority of your listening time that you are so generously giving us today for this episode and for her. So we're just going to do one segment today before we bring her on, which is adjacent, and it's a little bless and release.
Bless and release. You know you got to bless and release.
Very adjacent to our guest's area of expertise. Let's talk about the bless and release feature of keeping up with the news cycle.
Yeah.
Which is now, of course, 24/7.
Yes.
It is now entertainment news. You know, you and I grew up with CBS, ABC, NBC, Dan Rather,
News.
Tom Brokaw, news.
Yes.
The national news, we got 30 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. And it was covered the gamut of things, and it was supposedly impartial, certainly more than today. And now we have infotainment news, and it never ends.
It's so hard. And I actually am in a very different place than I was 4 years ago.
So am I.
6 years ago. I used to think it was my personal responsibility to educate myself every single day on what was happening. So I could talk to my kids about it. So I could talk to my neighbors about it. So we could like formulate like what we knew was true and what our next response was. But it's impossible to keep up with all of it.
Not only impossible, terrible for us.
It's terrible. And one of my neighbors took a step back years ago, and every so often she'd say, it's so unhealthy. Yeah. Like, you can't sustain this. But I was white knuckling it from a place of control and thinking that I was not doing my due diligence, my patriotic duty by not keeping up with what was happening.
That's right. Like we were abdicating our responsibility to a better world if we weren't listening to every single thing.
But what I had to acknowledge that it's almost impossible to find an unbiased source that isn't rooted in entertainment and money.
Yeah. Sarah and Beth over at Pantsuit Politics taught me years ago, all cable news is slanted. Cable news. So I was like, what about the cable news shows that I like? They're like, samesies.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it is.
So that was a hard truth to swallow.
Totally.
But I did. I follow a couple of independent journalists.
Yep.
I follow Allison Gill across platforms. News with swearing.
Yes.
Like obviously that's
your perfect genre.
And that's about it. And then I read people that I think I can trust. And then if I learn differently, I don't beat myself up about it. I just go try to find another voice. And I really do believe in this, like, I know it's woo-woo, but like collective consciousness. And if I spend all my time like nose into disaster info, then I'm putting that into the world.
That's right.
By consuming it, like...
That's the energy that you then reflect.
Yeah. So I do think we need to spend so much more time in our real lives.
Well, Tressie says this
at
the top of our interview.
Doing the good things because it matters.
Yeah. She said something like, if you spend 1 hour on social, spend 2 hours building something in God's world.
So I'm real sad about it. I was a news junkie, but it's not healthy. We need to be educated, but we don't need to be part of the problem, and I don't need to be the product anymore.
That's right. Well,
there's a news cycle.
There's a neurological component to it also because we are genuinely not neurologically built to sustain this level of constant outrage. We've seen all the, I'm going to get this wrong, so just don't quote this, listener, but it's something like we now consume in one day of just social media and cable news like input what we used to consume in a month.
Oh, yes.
Just information, outrage, bad news, hot takes. Hot takes didn't really used to even be a thing, not in the way that they are today. So we're not built for this.
No. This
is why we are overstimulated. Our central nervous systems are absolutely like out of control. We're unhealthy. We're sick. It's not just a bad idea for how it makes us feel in our hearts. It's how it feels in our bodies. And then ultimately, like you said, in our communities, because then we just reflect all of that chaos. Right back out. I know. I have done it. I have been a mirror of chaos.
And it makes I was treating people differently. Like, if they wanted me to disengage, I would think, like, with, righteous anger.
Oh, sure.
Like, I can't disengage. Like, you're not paying attention, so I have to pay attention twice as much.
How nice for you that you can just check out of what's happening in the world.
They were right.
They were right. And that does not mean that we are disengaged from injustice at all.
At all.
At all. I've mentioned this several times, but I have not been back on the news, cable news, one time since November 5th. No, not one time.
Me neither.
Not a single minute of a single day. I still know absolutely everything that's happening that's important. And I feel it in my bones. And it's not, I feel it like, tra-la-la, I don't care, I'm not paying attention, because I do. But I just feel it in a way that is not so triggered and unhelpful, because it's all emotion, like all flash, all heat. It's more thoughtful. It's a little bit more analytical. And so speaking of, we could not possibly bring you a better leader and thinker through these big ideas than the guest that we have today. We have probably one of the sharpest minds out there. We have Dr. Tressie McMillan Cottom. And she is a cultural critic. She is a highly celebrated sociologist. She's an award-winning writer. And she has a really rare gift. of communication. Sometimes I've had plenty of academics on the show, and sometimes they're very academic-y. And it's very dense, and it's very data-driven, and which that matters too. Like, there's a place for all of that, but she has this rare gift to blend the academic perspective and mind with a storyteller's communication savvy. She's a professor. Probably, God, they must clamor to get in her classes.
Can you imagine?
No, I am sure they are full on the first 10 minutes they open. She's a professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill at their Center for Information Technology and Public Life. And her work dives into huge ideas like racial capitalism. Like, see, I would have liked to have talked to her about that.
I know.
We did not get to everything we needed.
Next time.
Beauty standards. She's done a lot of work around the exploitation of higher education systems, which is fascinating, interesting work. But all in a way that you and I, just ordinary Joes, can absolutely consume, understand, and process, and connect to, and relate to. She had a real groundbreaking debut called Lower Ed, and like some of its biggest fans were like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And that whole book shined a light on how profit and debt took over American higher education. Say less. Any of us with student loans or students who are heading into that are like, who will help us here? It's a whole system that she analyzed. She has an essay collection called Thick, which was a National Book Award finalist. And it's just an incredible blend of honesty and wit. She's funny. And just powerful storytelling. And she is a New York Times columnist. That's where I see a lot of her current work right now. She's a 2020 MacArthur Fellow, which is just fancy. That's a fancy thing for smart people, if you don't know what that is. And her work matters right now. Her voice matters. Her leadership matters. I told her at the end of this interview, but I listen to her because I believe her and I trust her. And I think that you will be too. As I tell her at the beginning, I met her on the Oprah special last year, chased her down in the hallway afterwards and told her she was the smartest person in the room. Mm-hmm. So we've been trying to get her on the show ever since. And so lucky us.
Seriously.
And lucky you. Please enjoy this riveting and fascinating, brilliant conversation with the incredible Dr. Tressie McMillan Cottom. Well, I will tell you that I have been very much looking forward to having Dr. Tressie McMillan Cottom to the show, and I'll tell you why. First of all, hi and welcome.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Hey, Amy. Good to be here.
First of all, she's a doctor. She's a PhD. Her credentials are as long as our arms. And so she has given us permission to now call her Tressie, but like you can put respect in your mouth. She's got a doctor in front of it if you ever meet her out in the wild. Second of all, you and I were both on the Oprah special last year.
I know. Mm-hmm. Still not over it, frankly.
Same. Like, I don't think I slept for a week. What in the world? What are we doing? What are we doing?
No idea.
But I don't even remember what I said. It was like a fever dream. Yep. Like, I had to go home and look at it on the camera to be like, I have no idea. People are like, what'd you say? I'm like, who could know?
I don't know. Exactly. You tell me.
I just was looking deep into Oprah's eyes, and that's all I remember. No. But I don't know if you remember this. We sat in that room for 3 hours without a break, as you well recall. And so I heard the gamut of everybody that she had invited to that conversation, and from various perspectives and all these, we were all bringing our different analysis to the table based on what we do. Mm-hmm. And I ran after you. After the show, you were walking down the hall with one of your friends or colleagues, and I, like in my green heels, was racing down the hill, and I stopped you and I just said, you were the smartest person in that room, and I am so moved by everything you said. And if it were not Oprah, I wanted to give you my segment. I'm like, let's let her have mine. Give her 12 more minutes. Just a brilliant thinker and sociologist and analyst and leader. And so from that day, I've been telling my podcast team, I'm like, whatever we have to do to get her into this room, let's please try.
And listen, and all it took was a, hey, want to come on? Because I told you that day, anytime, and I meant it.
You did, and here you are, and thank you. Thanks for being with us this morning. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. So let's start here, Tressie. For our listening community who's new to you today, they're meeting you for the first time. Can you talk a little bit about your story arc, where you came from, what interested you at a young age to draw you into the path that you're now on, and some of the mega steps that you took to get here?
Oh, that's a great question. One that really, I think if you'd have asked me that question, by the way, Jim, maybe even as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, I would have really struggled to answer it, by the way. So, yay for growth, yay for therapy and time and space for reflection, right? Yay for getting older, probably.
All that.
Okay. Let's see. So, and I'm in the middle of writing my first attempt at a memoir. So you also have to take this time when you're doing that, to kind of reflect in a way that life has not always afforded me the opportunity to, like a lot of women. So listen, I am today, I'm a professor, I'm a researcher, a writer, a New York Times columnist. I wasn't supposed to be any of those things. Let's just start there. I am I'm from North Carolina, and for anyone born outside of the major U.S. cities, there's no real understanding that you will go from Kansas or North Carolina or whatever to these places. That's right. But I'm a big reader, come from a family of big readers, and I cannot overstate how much reading shifted my perspective of the scale of the world. And I will always be so deeply grateful to my family for developing that in me. I have been told that I was a, sassy mouthed girl, which I know you find so hard to believe. This is a great, you can say, yeah. Okay. Shocking, I know. Yes. And as it turns out, when you are a sassy mouth little girl who reads a lot, coming along in the 80s, when I was in school, 80s and 90s, they tell you you've really only got 3 jobs you can do. You were going to be a lawyer. Sure. You were going to be a teacher. They didn't really put doctor in front of me, but it was lawyer or teacher or something. And so that's what I thought I would be. I went to college to become an attorney. And then did that thing that women do, right? I end up instead having this major detour. I get married and, settle down to do sort of a really traditional path for myself that never quite fit. If I'm honest with you. Yeah. And I knew it didn't fit. But the problem is they told sassy mouth little girls what job you were supposed to do, but they didn't tell you what life to lead.
That's a great point.
Yeah. And I just really, I struggled to figure it out in a way that I think lots of women do. And so I ended up just doing what was prescribed. I got married, had children, had a horrible birth story, and that changes my life, right? I think every life has a trauma. So there's nothing really special about mine. But whatever your trauma is, you are then faced with a decision, usually, which is, do I want to be who I was before this? Yeah. Or am I going to be something different? And for me, marriage and working in corporate America, all of that had always chafed. And so I thought, well, no, if life is being blown up, I'll just blow it all up. Yeah. And that's the start of what I kind of call my 2.0, my second life. I go back to college and just kind of never stop. And that's how I end up with a PhD.
Sure. Listen, they'll keep giving you degrees if you want to keep showing up to the classroom.
Right? Yeah. Isn't it amazing? My father told me one day, he said, if you just keep showing up, they will give you the diploma. And I went, what? And as it turned out, yeah, he was right.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And discovered along the way, though, that I love really hard questions.
Yeah.
I am my happiest, if I can call it happy. I think, my most connected and joyful when I am trying to disentangle a really hard social problem that I think, if I want to be honest, I think everybody's got wrong. I'm really attracted to those places, those things where our beliefs are totally counterintuitive. Our gut is telling us something's there, but the picture's really fuzzy. And I think I'm attracted to that because, again, my path was so abnormal and so unique that I know that I wouldn't have existed if people had just gone along with what was supposed to be. And so I'm always looking at places where I think that's happening. And that's how I end up, being a writer and cultural commentator and a researcher.
God, that's such a rare and specific space to occupy, and not one to find easily. That's not the job description they give to the sassy mouthed girls.
Right? Oh, no.
You will unravel complicated social constructs. What's that? Where's that on a list of jobs? Like, you really had to fight for that, to find it.
I didn't know when I went to undergrad, I didn't quite know what one did in graduate school. I remember a professor having to sit me down and explain what that job even was. And I thought, well, yeah, okay, you mean go to the library and read? I've been doing that my whole life. But, learning the systematic way and doing research. And then certainly no one told me that writing was something you could do for a job. Writing. Totally. One was for men. I thought for a long time, I thought only dead men were published.
Dead white men.
Yeah, because that's all I'd ever been assigned. Yeah. I quite literally remember the first time I read something in a textbook written by a living Black woman.
Oh, right. Revolutionary.
And I didn't know you could do it. I remember asking the teacher, what do you mean she's alive? Where does she live? How is she in a book? So I didn't even know those were options. So much of my life has been building things that I didn't know existed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Your work often blends your personal narrative with really sharp sociological analysis. So when did you discover the power of combining those two things?
Yeah, sometimes that's one half of the brain or the other, but not always both.
Never both, actually. I mean, and when you're trained to be an academic and a researcher, the first thing they really try to, condition out of you is all of that personal stuff, right?
Right.
No one wants to hear it. It's not testable. It's not provable. It's not science. The challenge for me was that I had come from a place where I thought, especially the women who raised me, my grandmother, my mother, I was very fortunate. I had my great-grandmother for many years. I thought they sounded as intelligent as my professors. And so I really struggled with the idea that there was something counterfeit or, illegitimate about them and their stories and the things I had learned from them. And I struggled so much with the idea that you had to be one or the other. And I will tell you, Amy, what happened. I sat down one day to start writing something that was supposed to be an academic paper in that, removed academic voice of God that we're all supposed to write in. And all that would come out of me was the voice of my grandmother.
That's so good. That's so
and
good.
I wrote it mostly for myself. And this is the early days of the internet. If anybody remembers, where you could post things online and not have it ruin your life. You remember that?
That's right. It was a different time.
It was a very different time.
That's right.
I put an essay to that effect. I wrote it because it had no place. I was just, trying out this thing that I felt compelled to do. I put that essay on the internet, and frankly, it changes my life, right?
Yeah.
Early days of going viral again, when that was still a good thing. And it found an audience. And I thought, here's what I learned. People will read the thing that is written in an authentic voice.
That's right.
Nobody goes and reads the dissertation.
No. And they're compelled by story.
Stories are the only things that have ever mattered in the history of the world.
That's right. That's right.
I truly believe that. And I thought if you give up something as powerful as storytelling because somebody in a university told you to, then you deserve exactly what your fool self gets, as my grandmother would say. So
that's right.
I just started experimenting with that. And I to this day the things that I have written in that vein have had far more impact than anything I ever write as a researcher.
I want to drill in a little bit to the space in which you occupy. Your cultural critiques, your systemic critiques, your institutional critiques are laser focused. They're precise. They are piercing. They take no shit.
Thank you. I'm super proud of that one, Jen. Thank you, girl.
You have to. In the world in which you occupy, you have to have a spine of steel. As a woman, as a Black woman, as an academic using storytelling features in your work, you've got to be tough as flint, and you are. But it's to me, it is the precision with which your analysis digs into the crooks and crannies of a system, of a cultural standard. And it just, the way in which it rings so immediately true, even against norms, even against the prevailing powers of the day, of course, which it almost always is pretty stunning in its capacity. This is such a broad question, and I wish you good luck as you answer it. But I'd like to hear, if you could pick maybe one of the cultural critiques that you really love to drill into, to examine, to sort of turn over, to turn a page on the story. I'd like to hear maybe the arc of that process. Why it captures your imagination, what you then do with it, all of it. That's an insane question.
No, that is a process question. Okay. It is so smart. Thank you. I love, first of all, process. I could talk about this stuff all day. So you stop me when this train goes off the rails.
This is what we're doing here.
I love this stuff because, it is really the combination of, I think, the best parts of how I was trained and how I was socialized and loved, which is, again, you come from Southerners, we tell a story. Black people love a story.
Totally.
So you throw all that in there. And then women, are you kidding me? The women raised me. We are storytellers.
That's right.
And the first thing you learn when you are a storyteller in a community is you have a responsibility to other people, right? A storyteller in the South, in the Black tradition, I think even in the female tradition, the storyteller has a responsibility to the audience, right? We can't waste your time. We got to make it worth your attention, right? So I always feel a responsibility, and I'm not sure that's totally common among everybody who writes for the public. So I wed that with the fact that I was trained, however, to look for data, to look for places where people haven't looked, right, where things are unclear. So the combination of those two things, what that looks like in everyday life for me is I'm reading something or I'm eavesdropping, if I'm honest with you. Great. I'm out walking around, I'm eavesdropping, right? And I can hear someone telling a story or I can read an article and my gut will say, that's not quite it, right? It's not quite it. Like sometimes it's that they wrote this like really dry piece and didn't think of how to make this interesting for the reader. That's the storyteller in me. And I go, what would be a good way to tell this through a story? Then on the other side, there can be a story I'll hear people telling themselves. That's the thing that happens in eavesdropping a lot.
Certainly.
Overhear people telling a story and I go, aha, but I don't think they know what's behind that. The data, the research, the history, right? The economics. And so something, I call it my sociological spidey sense. So start tingling, right? It never fails me to look for a place where people are having a great big emotion about something.
Good
shouting
signal.
About it, crying Good about signal. It, complaining about it, right? But they're like using absolutely nothing concrete to talk about it.
Just hyperbole.
There you go. Have you ever had, when kids before they get all of the language, but they've got the big feelings?
Sure.
And they come to you and they go, I'm bleeding to death, I'm dying. And you go, what? And it's like, they fell and they hit their knee. Adults still do that. That's right. And if I look for those places, there's almost always some deeply held belief that people don't want to examine. There's a story they've been telling themselves that they know at a gut level is not quite true.
Sure.
And they are defensive and scared. And I go, oh, that's the place
something.
I need to go.
We got
head
something
first, right? So and the best place for that, by the way, is anything about women, because of the way we've told women's stories in this society. We don't tend to take seriously the things women need to tell a good story. So like science, medical science, doesn't know anything about how and why we feel pain, for example. We have horrible data about women's lives, but tons of lived experiences and stories. So that's why I think I can almost always rely on something around women, around race, around beauty. Let me tell you something. Nothing has been more generative to me than our deeply held, unexamined beliefs about beauty. To hide all that stuff we are uncomfortable with. But yeah, those are the places where like we talk a lot but don't have really good words about it, but we got really big feelings. And when I see that happen on social media or overhear it in a coffee shop or I read something, I go, yep, I got to go there.
Before you get to your question, because this is fascinating to me. I am moved by data, and I'm also a storyteller. You're just in you're in my cross section. So, like, I'd love to hear you go one step further on that.
Yeah.
So let's just say beauty, because you just used that for an example, which is you've written and spoken and taught so much around this. Give us an example. You're like, all right, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of emotion in the room, a notable lack of research and science around it, because women aren't valuable in that way to the culture. So pick one thing where you go, this is an idea that I'd like us to look at differently. This is something that you've written about. This is something that you've kind of exposed in a different way.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt that especially for young readers or new readers to me, a very offhanded comment I once made on TikTok about blonde and the history of blondness, and that blonde is politics. Right? I said, there's nothing.
Did you
honey.
light a match?
Oh, honey.
Did you light a match?
Thought I was going to have to move. Do you hear me? I mean,
I do, and I actually believe it.
As recently as a month ago, I'm standing in line to go see, oh goodness, it was a movie we were all going to see. So like maybe it might have been Baby Girl or something, just standing in line. And a woman comes up to me and she says, I just want you to know, I tried not dyeing my hair for a month. And I went back and I don't care what you say. And I was like, well, hello to you too.
She's big mad.
We're definitely strangers. And I just want to remind you of that. But I was standing on a street corner in New York, the center of the world. And I hear a woman behind me whisper, that's the girl who wrote about blonde.
Crazy.
Oh my God.
It's deep. It's deep in the water.
Well, that just means I'm just going to write about it till the day I die. Are you kidding me? But also, this is one of those places, right, where I thought, whoa, look at the response to this, right? I don't know that, I saw a TikTok and it was a young woman talking to her mother, trying to get her mother to like give someone proof that she had been born blonde.
Oh, boy.
And she was like, no, Ma, tell this person. She was handing her mother the phone, going, tell them. I've been telling them, and they don't believe me. And her mom is going, what are you talking about? Yes, you were blonde, And I thought, okay, we are just taking this at face value, but that's actually a really odd exchange.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Right? What's so powerful here that you would call your mother to tell a third party that you have been born blonde?
What's under that, and then what's under that, and then let's go what's under that, because there's stuff.
Girl, as it turns out, you could go all the way to the 8th circle of Hades on this thing. It keeps going. And so the outsized emotion there, right? The fact that we had such a neat little story. Blondes have more fun.
Sure.
Yeah, I like blonde. It covers my gray. Right? I've heard them all. And I go, all of that is true. And I like to point out the scene from... Devil Wears Prada. Where I think it's Miranda. She turns to her and goes, "You think you chose to wear blue today?"
That's right.
Let me tell you why you're wearing cerulean blue. That's right. Exactly.
That's right.
Well, that's me with like, oh, you think you just got lowlights? Right. Well, let me talk to you about that.
That's great.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Oh, I could talk to you about this stuff for 100 years.
You and me both. That's the problem. Yeah.
You've written about how technology platforms, you're on TikTok a lot.
Yeah. I'm there.
how they amplify certain inequities, particularly in marginalized communities. So how can we use these platforms, this technology, these spaces in a way to empower rather than exploit?
And talk about how that exploitation happens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I said last week for the first time publicly, and I'm going to double down on that mistake here with you all, that when you look at the arc of social media and platforms, the internet, whatever we want to call it now, the internet is social media, right? There used to be two different things, but like this, you know, this is all
That's
we're
right.
doing on this thing. So you say social media, and, you know, there was a moment, and I remember it, early 2010s, where we really had this sense that social media could create enough, you know, cultural connections. We were really talking about things like Arab Spring and democracy and how social media made this possible, especially for women across the world, right? That there was this like really radical potential in social media. And it pains me to say, but I think the evidence now is in, and it's clear that that moment was quick and it's over. Where we are now with social media platforms, the internet that we have inherited, which was not the internet we had to have. These were some decisions that were made. These were political decisions. These were economic decisions. We didn't have to have this internet. But the reality is this is the internet that we've got. And what that means is that every inequality in the quote unquote real world, the offline world, also exists online. And online is making all of them worse. I mean, the data to me now are just really clear on this.
Yes.
Like for every little, you know, and I'll have my young people who, of course, reject this outright, my students, right? And they go, no. You know, I used to be depressed and I met a group of people online and they saved my life. And I go, you are absolutely right, honey. And at the exact same time, social media made millions and millions of more people feel alone and led to their depression.
That's right.
And I'll say to them now, in a world where you found your collective online, and we know this other big thing is happening, let's talk trade-offs. Let's talk risk. Which of these do we want to build a world for?
Yeah.
Right? And these are the questions I think we're faced with now when we know for a fact, for example, that everything we're putting into these platforms, into these machines, they go into a big black hole. And what these platforms now know about us, what they know about children, which really scares me, allows some pretty nefarious actors. Listen, Twitter could be great in 2010, but we can see what happens to it in 2023.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're up for sale. All that stuff we produce is up for sale.
That's right. The people are the product.
The people are the product. And what that means when things can change hands, politics can change in an instant, is that suddenly the places where vulnerable people, gay people, young trans people, poor women, women who live in deeply patriarchal, oppressed societies, they thought they were in a safe space online, and then overnight, you're not.
That's right.
Right? And your data can be used against you. So what does that mean, though, for the choices we make? I'm not one of these that says you can't put the genie back in the bottle. We're online, as you said. I mean, I'm on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
We're all implicated. So that's my first thing I want people to know. Everybody's implicated, even if you do good on them. That's just what it means to live in a society, right? Your good deeds can be used against other people. What I think it means, though, is I like to say if the genie is out of the bottle on social media, creating all of these negative consequences, we've got to build a bigger, meaner genie. I think that means then, sure, use online, but maybe for every, I don't know, hour you spend on that, you actually build something in the real world.
That's good.
I don't know what that is. Is it your book club? I don't know. Is it your gardening? I don't know, right? We got millions of people. There are millions of different ways to do this. But if that thing is going to exist, maybe we can create and devote twice as much of our attention, which is so valuable now, and our energies to something that will build a bigger genie. So space, real spaces, real communities, you know, I mean, I know this sounds ridiculous because I don't think I could do it, but you know, what if for every comment we left online, we actually also sent somebody a letter or picked up the phone and called?
I hear what you're saying.
You know,
it's an imagination for a different world.
Yes.
But we have to opt into it, and that's the tricky thing.
That's the thing. because we don't have to opt in to the TikTok, to Facebook, right? That's happening whether we are there or not.
So easy.
But for the rest of this, you have to make a choice. You have to make a decision, and that's the hard part. But I think that the stakes now are sufficiently high.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that. I want to
Yeah.
talk about stakes. Of course, unsurprisingly, your voice was tapped immediately after the election on major spaces and platforms, just searching for meaning,
Yeah.
explanations. For a lot of us, is there hope? Are we doomed? There's just this talk about big emotion.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Talk about big emotion. If emotion is your guiding, if that's your North Star, you're never
busy.
You have your job is secure. You have job security. I just would like to hear you talk about the second Trump presidency. I want to just open this up, and I want you to just say whatever you want to say.
Okay.
But as we are examining democracy, literally at its core, as certainly equity and equality, power, money, norms, and the eradication of norms that I think a lot of us probably just took for granted would always be upheld.
Yep.
Marginalized communities and how they fit into this new Trump world. And because the second Trump presidency is now some things that even alarmed centrists the first go around from 2016 to 2020, or sort of old standard Republicans have become normalized so much over the last decade that even that is not ringing an alarm bell anymore. Anyway, I'm throwing 1,000 things at the wall, but with your analytical brain, your social brain, I'd like to just hear some of your thoughts on where we're at and where we're going.
I am working so hard these days to try to get like a really good linear through line because, as you point out, it's everything. Right, I think so. Part of what's been stunning to me, and it didn't much stun me, I will admit, about this second administration. I thought that he was the leader to win. I thought he would win. I knew and trusted that this administration would have learned, this term, he would have learned the lessons from his first. He was going to be more brutally efficient. That was always a concern of mine. He now knows how it works, and he knows what he can get away with, right? And I thought, everything he did in the first term, whatever you thought he did, buckle in if he wins again. None of that has surprised me. Do you know what has surprised me? Is the complete capitulation from the other side. The just collapse into the despondency. When this thing was predictable. I don't know where where were we in the bunkers, right? We saw this thing coming. And so I've thought a lot about that. And I think part of that is, as a storyteller, I do think we have a lack of a good story about what has happened. And without it, this is what I think happens to human beings when the world is complicated and they don't have a story about it. I think this is a perfect example of why, first of all, storytellers, Jen, like you and the people we love are so important. Without it, people actually, they're just sitting ducks. You can tell them anything, right?
That's right.
And so I'm working so hard to come up with a story. And I'll tell you what I've got now with the caveat that I reserve the right to revise.
Certainly. It's early.
Thank you.
It's early.
First, I think it's important for us to stop the gaslighting. It is as bad as you think it is.
That's good.
Let's stop this, right? I think especially as women, we know what gaslighting does to us. And one of the things that I'm going to use Trump as a stand-in for the whole thing, because now it's not just Trump, right? It's the whole ball of wax. But they have been so good at convincing you that you don't see what you see.
That's right.
If you see Elon Musk do a Nazi salute, it's a Nazi salute.
That's right.
Let's not waste time
it's what
and
it
energy.
is.
That's right. Let's not wait. This is the most legible, overt political administration in history.
That's good.
If you see it, you saw it. It's happening. Okay. And the second thing I want to say is believe him. We spent so much time his first administration trying to poke holes and find out where he was lying and all of this. No. What we should have learned from his first administration is that we should believe him.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's also a pretty simple response.
That's it. Right. So no need to go wasting all of your time and energy looking for the truth, right? When it comes to this, he is going to try to do exactly what he said. All right. So we've already taken some of our time and energy back, right?
That's good.
Here's what I'd love us to do with that time and energy. I would like for us to focus less on what Donald Trump how he got away with it, how we got here, and focus more on what vacuum was he filling.
Oh, that's a great question.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, because this is all this is. This was the right court jester showed up at the right time to fill the vacuum. So let's focus on the vacuum. Here's what I think the vacuum is. I think for a lot of us, you talked about the eradication of norms. Some people woke up and that was happening 4 years ago. But the truth is this has been happening for at least 20 years for some people. And there is, I think we need to, again, almost all of us are implicated here in not paying attention to how things were changing for people who are less fortunate than ourselves.
You're right.
The canaries in the coal mine were already there.
You're right.
The question was, why did you miss them? Why did you convince yourself it wasn't that important, right? Because now, here's the thing, it's come for all of us, right? This is self-interest to care about people less. We always focus on care about the less privileged because it's the right moral thing to do. I like to focus on the fact that it is also the smart, pragmatic thing to do.
That's right.
Because it will come for you eventually. So it's in your own self-interest to care.
That's good.
And so I think the vacuum he has filled is that there are a lot of very scared people who have experienced a total collapse of social norms. And the only person telling them a story about why that has happened is Donald Trump.
That's so resonant.
Okay?
Yeah.
He's telling you who to blame. He's telling you who will fix it, right? So my challenge, and I think our collective challenge, everybody who has the ability and the privilege to do so, is to say, here's a better story. The story is actually somebody was supposed to be watching the clock. And we let them off the hook, even when we like them. And I'm going to hold us all accountable. Listen, you can love your Democratic representatives, but I think we need to be honest. They took their eye off the ball in some instances. And we should ask ourselves, why? Why aren't we hearing about, I should turn on the news every night, I think, and I should hear an important story about how regular people are surviving climate change and stagnating wages, and I should know that this thing is happening. And when it isn't happening, how do you hold somebody accountable for it? Because that's the vacuum that I think Donald Trump and this administration and the shift to really nasty politics has done. The other thing I would say is I don't think it's over. Yes, the train has left the station, but at the same time, y'all, it's not over. These things, if you look at history, history moves slow, but when it moves real fast. You have these big, slow gaps, and then all of a sudden, overnight, everything can change.
You're right.
And I think our challenge now is to be the people who decide what that change is going to be right now, because we're in that moment. We're in the moment of the rapid change.
That's right.
Okay. And so our challenge is to be those people to help determine what change is going to be. And I do think there's still a chance to win, but not if you spend all of your energy looking for the ways that, Donald Trump lied or how, so what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He lied. That's what it is.
Yeah,
Move on.
Move on.
We don't need to exegete the whole thing. It's just what it is on its face.
Yeah.
What do we do with it?
It reminds me of, we've all had the girlfriends, or maybe even we've been the girlfriends, I'm going to be fair, who have, had the horrible boyfriend and they become obsessed with litigating everything he did. And you go, but girl, you already know he did that.
It's good.
Why are you still looking for
example.
proof?
It's a good example.
Let it go. He's the ex you think he is. Let's get to work now.
So acknowledging what this looks like now, being honest with ourselves, what is your forecast of what this administration means to education, technology, labor,
climate?
Climate, by the way, is I think the big. All right, I did a probably ill-advised Instagram live recently because I didn't have hair, makeup, or light. But my point stood, which is I think a lot of this anxiety we have has been about the fact that we have not tackled the hard questions that climate change is bringing.
And it's urgent. It's imminent.
You look at the research and they'll tell us we're already 20 years too late.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you talk about things like, why is the rent so high? Or why is it so hard to find housing? Why are wages not keeping up with the cost of living? Almost, why are people moving? People aren't just coming to the United States because we've got, great ambiance. They're coming because climate has pushed them out of other places, right? And so almost everything, actually, that we're talking about, everything that Donald Trump is demonizing right now is a consequence of climate change, by the way. So when you talk about like housing, you talk about inequality, you talk about, this like horrible return to like the patriarchal impulse in our society. I think all of that is anxiety driven by that. And we do not have almost anywhere really anybody telling us what we're supposed to do there, except we know our individual solutions aren't fixing it, right? Yes, you should buy less, and yes, we should recycle, and yes, we should do those things, but we got big problems we're going to need to figure out. And I think our next like short-term step is being honest about that. Somebody needs to we need to start telling each other the story that like, yeah, you think that's about the fact that you can't get insurance now for your house, but let me tell you how that's about climate change and what we aren't doing to address that, right? I just think we need to have some really hard conversations about that. And what I think is happening next, I mean, I'm actually I'm not upbeat, but like I don't think all is lost, in part because I talk to people who are activists and organizers.
Of course.
I talk to people who have survived it too. You can talk to, again, it's happening to people now, but it happened in New Orleans 25 years ago.
You're right.
Yeah.
And those people are still surviving. So I want to go talk to them and find out how. Right?
You're so right.
Yeah, it's
like,
happening.
The long story of history is weirdly comforting. When we can look in the face of our in its weird way, we can look at our worst impulses and go, this isn't the first time we have faced this level of chaos, of inequality, of systemic injustice. It's just our generation's turn.
That's I say this all the time. It's just your turn.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have to say it to myself, by the way, too.
Me too.
When I get really down, and then I go, what are you talking about, Tressie? I'm the children of the civil rights. I'm a child of the civil rights movement.
That's right.
Okay? Me going to my office on the university campus is not a sit-in. Okay? And I have to keep that in mind. That's right. It's just my turn.
It's our turn.
This is it.
I'd love to see you turn the analytical lens on yourself, because you sit at the intersection of some really powerful demographics. You are a woman, you are a Black woman, you are an academic, in what has largely and historically in America, of course, been a white man's world.
Yeah.
You're in the Deep South.
Yeah.
That's its own deal. That's its own intersection. So all of that really matters. Your identity matters to your work. It matters to your perspective. It matters to the way in which you perceive facts and history and systems and trends. And so I'd like to hear you just talk about the genuine advantage being exactly who you are brings your work to the table.
I could just hug you for that. Thank you. When people usually ask me that question, they want to talk about how hard it is.
Oh, no, it's advantage.
And it's right. And I go, are you kidding me? It's my superpower.
That's right.
I walk into a room, I started my academic career studying. Amy asked me about education and what's coming. By the way, it's not good, but we'll survive it. But yes, I started by studying education, higher education, and the high costs and student loan debt and da-da-da. And I would walk into these rooms with people, from the places one comes from, Harvard and Yale and Princeton, Carnegie Mellon, and they'd have impressive data and economic data and da-da-da-da. And I'd walk into the room, and after about an hour or so, I'd ask everybody in the room who had ever gone to college using a student loan to raise their hand. And it would be like me and the secretary.
That's right.
Right? But because that's who I was, I could go into those rooms and go, I know what you think the data say. And I agree with you. I'm not I'm not arguing with the data, but I'm telling you that for women, that is not true. Because women are going to school and they're also taking care of children. And so their cost of tuition includes childcare.
That's right.
And so when you say that college is maybe more affordable, I'm telling you it's not, because you're only concerned about tuition. And I'm telling you that when you're a woman and you're responsible for children, you can't live in the dorm. So you've got to have an apartment. That means you're out on the open real estate market and you don't have the job to do it, right? My questions then are very different. My mom went back to college when I was a kid. I was a kid sitting in the back of the classroom with her. I know her story was different than mine when I attended college, right? So who I talk to, that lens that I bring to those things are the reasons why, those same people will turn to me and go, well, how did you know that 5 years ahead? And I go, because Black women in the South are already living in the future.
That's right.
We're already there, right? And so, no, it strengthens where I look for the truth.
Yep.
It sharpens my instincts about what rings true in data, right? And I ask questions like, okay, solving this problem for some people, will that create inequalities for other people?
That's good.
Right? Because
That's
we
good.
can get so focused on solving problems for the middle, right? And I go, but are we now making it worse for someone else? And when that's your question, as it turns out, I think you come up with very different sort of like policy solutions, very different sort of ways forward. So, I would not give up for the world the things that my identity does to sharpen, my analytical skills. Absolutely.
It's a piece of your brilliance. This is part of the reason why the elimination right now of all the DEI initiatives and spaces is devastating. And not just if you're interested in a nation of equality, like we claim to be, or fairness and equity. If you care about the bottom line, if you care about solving problems, if you care about productivity and morale, if you are fully self-interested, you should want every DEI initiative, hire, space, place in your ecosystem. And so this is bad for everyone. It's bad for everyone.
Could not say that better. When people try to separate issues of, inclusion or diversity or access or mobility from issues of economics and quote unquote hard data, you've already told me what your belief system is, right? The idea that only those of us on the other side, by the way, are ideologically driven is absolutely false. The minute you separate those two issues, you have told me that you actually aren't serious about economic productivity.
That's right.
Because if you were, you would know that there's 50 years of research that says that the more diversity you have at every level of a firm, the better you are and perform in the market.
That's right.
And so if you're willing to reject that because you don't want to have someone tell you how to hire, then you are ideologically driven.
That's right.
And you're working, against
and you're
your
a damn
own
fool.
self-interest. You're a damn fool, and you're bad at business.
It's the same reason we look at countries around the world, and when they decide to educate their girls and prevent violence, changes. The GDP starts the uptick. So, you're ideologically driven and you're a damn fool.
That's right.
And I can stop listening to you, which I often do.
Same.
Yeah.
So as you look at all of these issues, big issues facing us, what is giving you hope? What's making you dig deeper?
So I like to remind myself and my students and the people I work with that we think of crisis as being negative, all horrible, right? But crisis usually also has to come for progress, right? And so I look at a moment of crisis, as much as I try to keep my eye on, don't get me wrong, I keep my eye on the disaster capitalism, and I keep my eye on the vultures, and I keep my eye on those things. I'm also always looking in a moment of crisis for the potential, because it's also necessary for that.
That's good.
And there are a few places where I find that. I did this piece. This was actually before Trump's election, but I think really presaged it for me, by the way. I was working with, when interviewed people who are trying to protect housing for poor people across the South.
Yeah.
And they were excited.
Interesting.
Right? You think you go into these spaces in this political moment, and they're like, again, like so many of us right now, you think they were like, collapsed on the floor. And they say, oh, no. Crisis means people are willing to renegotiate the terms.
Great.
And we're ready. We've been
goosebumps.
training. Yeah, they're like, we're ready. We've been training for this. It's time. We get to come back to the table. And so they're asking for things about fair housing rent, collectively bargained for poor people across the South, which, as it turns out, is also better for the government. It's also better for the housing market. It's just literally better for everyone. And they're like, no, crisis for us is an opportunity. We're so ready. I leave something like that and I go, well, how dare I be depressed, right? I'm going home to my house. Like, how dare I, I talk to people who are doing a lot of work in reproductive justice. And, we're living in post Roe v. Wade America. But I talk to women in Mississippi, poorest state still in the country, where, historical and contemporary racism has just impeded their ability to do almost anything meaningful as a government on education and healthcare and all of that. Right. And you walked into a place where they helped women travel across the country to get access to abortion care or reproductive care. And they're having a party. They had the music on. They're laughing on the hotline with the woman who's called. She said, you know what? A woman who needs our services, the day she gets us on the phone is one of the best days of her life. She's in a great mood when she calls us.
Oh, wow.
She said, our hotline is often full of people who are relieved, right? There's something in the fact that crisis for them has made people more likely to reach out to each other, because I think that's the vacuum we had, by the way, the isolation, the individualism. And so I'm actually looking in places where you would think people would be the most depressed.
That's great.
The most detached. And right now they're going, it's our time.
That's amazing.
That gives me a lot of hope.
God, that gives me a lot of hope. Yeah. What a great way to end this interview. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
I love to hear that.
It's happening. It really is.
Yes. Walking around doomsday is serving nobody, not ourselves, not our neighbors, not our country. I just think that is an incredible perspective, and history upholds it.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that is really important.
We have precedence for this.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, well, what I would like to do is hold you hostage on this podcast for the rest of the day, but I understand that you are an important person and you have work. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
Just thank you for your work in the world. It means a lot to me. And I learn from you, and I listen to you, and I trust you. I believe you. And it matters. It matters. These outposts that people are building with honesty and integrity and story and data and hope. I think this is the answer. I think it's the solution. No one else is coming. It's not some big outside thing that's going to happen.
That's so important. Yeah. Remember I told you I'd like to reserve the right to revise a story? That's also a big part of it. Nobody else is coming, y'all.
They're not.
It's us. And guess what? That's actually the good news, because we're more prepared than we think we are.
Right.
Thank you, Jen, for reminding of us that. And I swear to you, I could just hug you for this conversation. Thank you.
Same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're listening. We're cheering you on. Keep going. There's so many of us behind you. So many of us in that march. And so until next time, until I can talk you into another hour of your brilliant time.
For you. I will take that call just like I took this one. Anytime, y'all. Thank you.
Noted. Thanks, Tressie. All right, you guys. Like we have said, I guess, 10 times now, we had more that we wanted to talk about. She is such a deep well of wisdom and information and thought and analysis. And so I say all that to say, you're going to want to follow her. So let us round this up for you. Go over to jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab, and we'll have Tressie's everything. Her social handles, her spaces, links to her books and her work. I will just tell you, I think now more than ever, it matters who we choose to listen to. It matters. This is a really good time to quiet some of the noises that are just like, well, a clanging cymbal, like the Bible said.
Yes.
And really time to tune into these people with really thoughtful, sober-minded perspectives on our world and our role in it right now. And she is 100% one of them. So don't forget also, while you're over there on the website, we've got the new feature where you can leave us a message and you can ask a question, you can leave a comment, you can add to the story, whatever it is. We're really excited about that. We're really excited not just to hear from you, but to actually play your messages on the show. So you'll see that over there under the podcast tab when you head over to jenhatmaker.com. All right. That was a good one today.
That was a good one. Thank y'all for listening.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.